What's up, Dragon Brood? Today, we're going to talk about why people aren't making nearly as much selling Magic as a lot of them think they could, and kind of the pitfalls you can avoid, or maybe some things you can look into if you're actually thinking about selling Magic on the secondary market, because there's a lot more to it than I think the average person gives thought to. Unfortunately, I've gotten to do it as a business, and I've done it as an individual, so I have a little bit of experience, but you know what? Let's talk about it, and let's try to make life a little easier on you if you plan to sell some Magic. One more quick note, I want to say that a lot of these tips actually apply to a lot of different markets. I'm just focusing on MTG because that's what I spend most of my time on daily. But if you are into any other collectibles, sports cards, comic books, Pokemon, whatever, like a lot of the same stuff's going to apply to that too. Okay, so the first biggest pitfall I see that people make is they actually haven't taken time to hone their actual knowledge. And what I mean by this is I think a lot of us as gamers, we always think we know more than we do, but we don't necessarily know what we need to know sometimes. Like in this example, let's talk about the singles, right? People all know the big cards. We're all targeting the big things. People are looking for the big things. That part's easy. You know, if you see some dual lands or, I don't know, demonic tutors or whatever, you know those are worth something. But there's a lot of people that don't know about the smaller cards that may be kind of sliding between the cracks, and that's where a lot of your money is going to be made. As an example, a card like Lightning Greaves always sells for at least $5, like always. And you can find tons of these in collections, so that's something you could look for when you're going through bulk, right? It also changes what you can pay for bulk if you know roughly what sets are in there and what commons and uncommons come out of those sets. And also, let's not forget there's cards like Vanquisher's Banner that are actually fantastic cards for kitchen table play, but never had an impact in standard and still doesn't have an impact in any competitive environment. But it still sells for $10, right? So these are the type of cards you can find in people's bulk bins or just random boxes of junk that actually have real value. And this is where you can make a lot of your money. It's sometimes on the big cards, sure. If you get lucky, maybe you score a couple in a collection or whatever, but it's a lot of the smaller cards you need to know about from all these different sets where you're going to make a very big chunk of your money. Another thing that I don't think people consider is the platform they plan to use to sell their cards or other products, right? Because they each are something different. Like, for example, eBay is something where you go and you just post a thing, but it also requires you to post pictures and you have to keep up with responses and other things. But it's going to be on an auction basis, so things will sell over time. You know, there's going to be an end point. You can set that, and that works maybe around your schedule or whatever. Easy enough. But then you also have environments like Cardsphere, where you can just put a bunch of stuff up and you can sell when you're ready and you can buy when you're ready. You can also decide what price it's going to sell for, as opposed to something like eBay where, you know, the price sells for what it sells because you have to honor the auction price. But then there's also TCGPlayer, where you can set a price and then people come looking for it. And there's a very large market of people that go to TCGPlayer to buy stuff. So it makes sense that maybe that one's one for you. If you're not worried about price, you just set it and forget it, and you have the time to sell stuff as those orders come in, because you can't set a schedule and you can't sell when you want to, right? Each environment's going to be completely different, and you have to figure out the one that works for you. But even beyond that, there's a whole set of costs. Every site has listing fees, seller fees, you know, you have your cost to shipping, you have your cost of supplies. Like, those aren't free. Like, that actually has to be figured into what you're spending on all your stuff. It doesn't matter if you're going to make 20% profit on a $2 card if you're going to lose that between your envelope, your tracking, your top loaders, you know, whatever, right? And any listing fees or whatever, or seller fees, right? That can eat into that. And a lot of times those fees are going to be anywhere between 10 to as high as 20%, depending on the card, the situation, everything else. So that's a big chunk of money gone that you have to figure into your equations, or you're not really going to make near as much as you think you are. And one of the biggest issues, really, of all of them is simply time. Like, when you look at how you have to spend time to acquire the cards, unpack things, take stuff out of perfect fits with, oh my lord, those things take forever sometimes. I've had full collections in perfect fits, and that is the worst possible thing. I've even charged people 10% to take their stuff out of top loaders or out of perfect fits, or they can just keep that 10% and do it themselves. Literally 100% of the time, every person has passed on it and just gave up that 10%. Like, that's how much of a pain it is. But you're talking about having to de-sleeve stuff from sleeves or from binders. You have to take time to organize it however you choose to, alphabetical, by set, whatever, like that takes time. And then you also have to take time to list it. And listing may include checking for conditions, taking pictures, whatever is necessary, giving a description, whatever you need to do to set it on that site that you choose to use to be able to sell the cards. And that's a very large chunk of time. I mean, currently I have 2 boxes over there that have a bunch of cards in there sorted and alphabetized. And honestly, between getting those out of all their apparatus or packaging, whatever you want to call them, that they came in, getting them sorted and getting them up on listing sites, like that took the better part of about 30 hours. Like, that's a lot of time. That's almost a whole work week. Like, a lot of people don't have that kind of time. And that doesn't even include what it takes to ship them, right? Because then I have to go through, pick and pull, make sure we have their proper condition for the cards that are going out, make sure they're packed accordingly, label stuff, print labels or whatever off this printer behind me, like making it just a lot of steps. And I can tell you, I spent the better part of 2 work days just packing up 60 orders each of the last 2 weeks, right? Just so I could get them out. I did 30 one week and 30 the next week. And it's a lot of time. You have to schedule that in, and some people just don't have that. And a lot of that is very time sensitive, right? If cards are hot and people are looking for them and you want to maximize your money, well, you're going to have time set aside to get those out while people are looking to buy things. If you wait, you miss the moment, well, maybe the card comes back down and now you didn't make nearly as much. So you have to be available, but as well, just have that time figured into your schedule so you can deal with stuff, because that's a real issue. And then we have the cases of what we'll call the incidental unknowns. If you own a retail business or you've worked for a company, that's oftentimes what they refer to as shrinkage, right? There's going to be some damage, some theft, whatever, and that's just usually going to be as much as 2% of your overall sales, right? So that's just money just gone, right? And in the online environment, when you're trying to sell singles, that could be people scamming you, that could be people claiming packages don't show up, package could legitimately get lost. I mean, there could be people who don't like the condition of a card, so they want to ship it back, and now you've wasted that shipping sending it to them. And on some sites, you have to pay to have stuff shipped back to you even, right? So that comes out of your actual fees and everything else. So you don't actually make money on those things, and that becomes part of the process that you still have to account for. So when you add all those things up, it could cost you a big chunk of money if that happens more than a couple of times in a month, depending on what your sales volume are. So I think a lot of people don't consider that, but that's actually part of the business. Anybody who does it for a living, anybody who owns a retail store for business will tell you, or owns a retail business for a living, will tell you that that's a real thing. Like, you have to figure that into your math or it's going to kick you in the butt later on. Another big one I bring up for people a lot is you got to have an exit strategy. Like, I see a lot of people talk about, this card's going to be worth so much later. I'm going to buy 200 of this thing because it's only 25 cents or whatever. But the reality is, like, who are you going to sell 200 copies to of that card if it does spike to $3 or $5 or whatever, right? No vendor is going to want to buy that many from you. So you end up having to do extra work going to, I don't know, maybe 10 different stores or vendors trying to sell stuff. And none of them may be taking more than 4 to 10 copies, depending on the size of their volume. Maybe they'll take 20 if you're lucky, right? That's just a thing you have to deal with. You have to have a realistic exit strategy. Maybe it's, all right, you're a vendor. You're going to set up at local conventions when, it's not COVID or whatever. And that's one way you can move some of that volume. Makes sense. But if you don't have that opportunity, then maybe you have to, maybe invest smaller. Maybe get only certain cards that are high moving, right? You have to figure all that stuff in. Because there's a lot of times I see players who have the intention, or at least they talk like they plan to sell something and they're buying something as an investment. But then I want to keep it. I want to play with it, put it into a deck. I want to put it on display in my man cave or whatever it is, right? That's all fine and good, but don't lie to yourself. Understand that if you're getting it to sell, then it's to sell. Because that brings up my next point. And that's making sure to take your emotion out of the equation. That's very hard for people to do, but it's something that's absolutely necessary. Like, emotion doesn't really have a spot in here if your goal is to make money. Here's the thing. Just like I was saying before, some people get cards and say they have the intention of selling, but then they get attached to it or whatever. But the reality is, if you're in it to make money, you're in it to make money. If you're in it to be a collector, you're in it to be a collector. One of the things I used to talk to some of the retail partners or friends that I had, I would just look around, and when they had old inventory sitting around, they didn't know what to do with it, I asked them, do you want to be a business or do you want to be a museum? Because if you want to be a museum, you're doing great. If you want to do a business, get these the hell out of here. You sell them for what they sell for, move it on, use that money to buy other things that you know you can flip and make cash, right? It doesn't make sense to just sit on stuff forever. Like, yeah, maybe you're waiting for the price to spike down the road or whatever. Maybe you don't want to sell something for $20 today because a year from now you could have made $28 or whatever. But the reality is, if I paid $5 for that card and it's $20 now, great, I still made 15 bucks. I don't care that I didn't make $23. Like, I'll just sell it now and be happy. And I can use that money during that year's time to make more than that extra $8 I'm not getting right now. But just sitting on here in the hopes that it'd be worth more isn't really worth it. It's just not. Like, move it, sell it, get what you need, move on. Like, that's just how you have to do it. You got to take emotion out of the equation. Like, business doesn't have a lot of room for emotion. Sad but true. That's just not how it works. So you got to do the best for yourself. Set targets, set goals, get the stuff out the door, make the money. And to that point, I kind of want to further talk about the research aspect. Understand what things are selling for in different markets so that way you can make the proper decisions before you even make a purchase. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of different avenues where the average Joes can go out and try to sell cards. Well, if a lot of people are doing this, you can end up in a race to the bottom. And when you are, that means a lot of times stuff is not going to sell for what it normally could sell for, or maybe even what it should sell for in some cases, because you have a lot of people just trying to make some pocket cash, trying to dump their way out of the market. Well, then it's not worth being in those particular items. Just don't do it to yourself. Like, don't buy things that you're not going to be able to make your money off of. I know it sounds kind of easy and obvious, but there's a lot of people who buy stuff because they're like, oh, I know these are played, I know these are hot, whatever. But there's also the issue of like, well, what if a card is possibly going to be reprinted? You know, watch WotC's release schedule, see what cards might be able to be put into certain products. If it's a Commander only thing, then maybe it has a chance to stay higher in value unless there's another year of Commander coming out, which they're going to do every year, but cards don't get reprinted every year. And maybe there's like a Commander Legends product coming. Okay, cool. Then maybe you keep your eyes on that before you make another big purchase on a bunch of Commander things. But as you see previews and the stuff doesn't come out, then maybe you can go in and buy this other stuff that you know is going to spike again, right? There's a lot of things like that you have to pay attention to. A lot of different things going on in the market at all times. And those that can really kind of, I don't know, read the tea leaves, if you will, well, they're going to be the ones that are going to make a little bit more money. If you haven't taken the time to research and make yourself better at doing that, you're going to lose more money, or at least not make nearly as much. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. This wasn't about me trying to discourage you from going out there selling your cards or doing anything else. Honestly, sometimes it's just easiest to go to a vendor and say, let me see your buy list, boom, sell it. But if you do want to sell things for yourself, take the time to pick the platform that works for you, sell it at the price you want to make on it, and then just be happy with it and walk away. Not everything has to be about max value. Not everything has to be about long-term value. It's what's good for you at that particular point in time. Just know what's going on. Give yourself the best chance to make money. I want to see you be successful at everything you're doing, and that includes selling your stuff. But understand the environments of where you're selling, how you're selling it, and the costs involved. Do the proper research. Do yourself a favor. If you don't have the time or the knowledge, or you don't want to do it, just go to somebody's buy list, dump your cards. It's going to be easier, faster, headache-free. You're still going to probably turn a decent amount of money, and everyone's going to be happy. And to be honest, I can tell you from experience, that takes up a lot less space. Anyway, let me know how you feel about this. Any other things that people may have forgotten about, or suggestions you have, or any bad or positive experiences you've had selling stuff. Let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, do all the wonderful things to let people know about this video. That's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.